Are you in a narcissistic relationship, or are you currently dealing with either bullying or narcissistic abuse in your life? Well, if this speaks to you, you're in the right place. Or even if you're not quite sure if you're experiencing narcissistic abuse, this podcast is really going to support you to identify what that is and what the traits are of this behavior. So welcome to New Earth Podcast. I'm really delighted to have Saira Francis on the podcast today. Welcome, Saira.
Thank you, Sarah. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and to talk about something that I'm so passionate about.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you for coming on, because it is such a big and important topic, and I know that we've spoken about how when you started speaking up about this, you were just absolutely astounded at how many people are experiencing or have experienced this in their life. And I think it's very reflective of the world that we're living in. So, discussing how we can shift this into more harmonious, heart-based spaces is just so important.
It's so important. And yeah, like I said to you earlier, I was really shocked when I started to put it out there online, probably about a year ago, that I'd suffered with this and that I was had consequences. I've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder from it, and I've been on a huge healing journey around that for the last 2 years. And just to discover what had been happening to me, and then starting to share it on my Instagram and my Facebook and my YouTube, and the amount of people that were coming back to me, and it was really resonating for them, really saying, gosh, this is happening to me, or it's happened to me, or I think it might be happening to my friend or my sister or my mum or my dad. It affects so many people, and it's been so hidden for so long. And I feel that now, what's happened to me, my own journey with it just felt that I've become very passionate about sharing and trying to support people in recovering, because it really is. It takes a long time. It's a huge part of a healing journey. And so what happened to me was from the age of 25, I was in my first marriage was with a very, very difficult, toxic, narcissistic man. And that's just been it. I'm now 52, so 27 years, not constantly in narcissistic relationships. I was single for a long time. I brought my children up alone. But obviously, when you've had children with a narcissist, it doesn't stop at the end of the relationship. It carries on, and you just got to keep battling with this kind of blocking and difficulties. And then, of course, you're also dealing with the children and their trauma. And then I just kept getting myself back in these very toxic relationships. And the last time that happened was 2 years ago. It was so shocking the way that relationship ended, and what it led me to in my life. I call it my life earthquake, because it just shook me to the core, and it forced me to look at, why did I keep doing this? Not only why was this happening to me? Yeah, it's like not just projecting it out, thinking, what's happening with me? And that was when I discovered, diagnosed by a psychotherapist who I met at that time, and I've been working with ever since. She said, this is definitely complex PTSD, and you have been in narcissistic abusive relationships. And that was kind of it, really. It was like this sudden, the light went on, and I suddenly, it all made sense. And since then, working with her led me to really go deep into looking into my own healing, my own shadow. Why was I struggling with boundaries? Why was I fawning, which is the fourth of the you've got fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Why was I doing that? Why was I being so compliant, so nice to these men in these relationships who were really being very unkind and cruel, and causing me huge stress? So that then led me a year on to starting to talk about it. So I wrote a blog last year, which is on my website, called Spiritual Survival Tips for Trauma Survivors. And it was very honest, very blunt about what had happened to me, careful and sensitive, but also lots of ideas of what you can do if you have suffered in that way, and to start to recognize that it's happened to you, and to recognize what it's done to you, you know, the trauma that it may have left you with. Because that can take, I mean, I would say I'm definitely still recovering. And, you know, that's 2 years on. I feel amazing. I feel great. Life's good. I feel very peaceful, but it's still a long way to go. And for me, I'm not ready yet to get back into a relationship. So I really understand when people come to me, how hard it is and how long it takes. And yeah, so that's what I tried to do last year. Go on.
No, I was just saying thank you so much for having the courage to, you know, go on this journey and be a voice around this topic, because it has been hidden. And I think, you know, what you were saying about not really knowing that you're in a relationship in that way, you know, in a way we're all in that position because of the worlds that we've lived in, and there has been this kind of toxic abuse. And so therefore, you know, we're all a little bit blind. So I'd love to start by talking with you about how we can identify if this is happening to us.
Well, it's really, really hard. There are some classic signs that will let you know that what's happening to you is narcissistic. But firstly, I want to say I'm not a psychotherapist. I am a yoga teacher. I am a healer. This is something I'm offering, but I do say, first of all, do get some help, do get some guidance if you think this is happening to you. But what can happen in the initial stages of a narcissistic relationship is called love bombing. And that is when someone will come in and they'll be incredibly intense with you and mirror exactly what you need. So they will almost work out if this is probably happening for them subconsciously as well, you know. For example, I'm very into yoga. So a man might then decide to come in and suddenly be very into yoga and be very much talking about being on a spiritual path themselves. That's like the love bombing phase. They'll offer you huge amounts of support. They might, you know, if you're the sort of person that likes a lot of attention, then they'll spend a lot of time with you. They'll call you, they'll text you. Everything will move quite quickly. It can happen. It's almost like you've met your soulmate, you've met your twin flame, and suddenly, you know, they're in love with you very soon. They're suggesting you move in together very quickly. And you'll kind of be on this, it's a very high feeling. So if that sense of almost love at first sight, instant attraction, all of that, if that's happened to you, that can be a real sign. Be careful, because that isn't really necessarily the right way to start a relationship. It's better to be boundaried and take time. So then once they've kind of got you, so often the love bombing phase is to sort of draw you in and drag you in and create something called a trauma bond. And then things can slowly start to change, and it happens quite subtly, but almost sometimes overnight, when they just feel like they've got you where they want you to be, they'll suddenly start to knock you a little bit. There'll be little comments. They might sort of like put you down either to your face or in public. And then it can go right on to the full effect of, you know, really extreme psychological abuse. And the classic technique that a narcissist will use is something called gaslighting, which I think we're all quite aware of now, but it's quite difficult to understand what it is. And gaslighting is when a narcissist will basically sort of trick you into thinking that it's your fault. And that's why I stayed in narcissistic relationships. That's why a lot of people do for so long, because they feel they've been manipulated to believe that the issues in the relationship are all down to them. So, for example, a narcissist might rage at you. Narcissistic rage is really common. So they'll flip out. You'll be completely shocked. Suddenly, this lovely person that you thought you'd met has turned on you. And then, you know, you're very upset. You're shocked. You'll go back to them and say, well, you know, I'm really concerned about that, you know, and they'll say, well, if you weren't such a nightmare, I wouldn't lose it on you. Or, you know, they'll sort of turn it around. So they'll sort of keep projecting it back onto you and saying, well, it's because you're so insecure, I can't cope in this relationship, so it makes me angry. It's and you know, it's similar to domestic violence, the way that a person who is violent towards a partner will blame the partner for causing them to lose it on them. So it's done in a very manipulative, very subtle, very covert way often. And it's often done in a way that nobody else can see. So
Yes.
if everyone around you, often your friends and family, the person, the narcissist, will be so charming, so kind of
It's
in public.
interesting, isn't it? Yeah, and you know
Yeah.
what you said about the love bombing is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the flip side of that is also the same, that they know not only, you know, what you said about the love bombing, but know exactly where your wound is, and that's
Yes.
what will be poked at. That's what
They'll
will
keep
be, you know,
going for that.
and that's
Yes.
why it's
Yes.
perhaps quite subtle, because we all have different inner wounds, core wounds, but
Yes.
you know, only we, you know, they're not necessarily, you know, out in public, as it were. So
Yeah.
that's why is that how you perceive that as well,
Absolutely.
Saira?
And so what can happen is very early on in the relationship, perhaps if you have some insecurities about being cheated on, for example, perhaps you've been betrayed in a previous relationship and it's a wound on you, or perhaps you have some abandonment issues, that kind of thing. The narcissist will perhaps realize quite early on that that's an issue for you, and then they'll actually start to create problems in the relationship. They'll actually perhaps flirt with someone purposefully to upset you, or perhaps they'll leave you, you know, for a few days without being in contact to sort of like trigger that upset in you. And we have to distinguish between the normal behavior of someone doing that, which of course, not speaking to someone for a couple of days is fine, and talking to a woman in the pub or a man in the pub is absolutely fine. But a
Yes.
narcissist will use it to actually you know, quite cruelly trigger you. And then, you know, you will get yourself into, you'll start feeling more insecure. And then you'll start to feel like you're going a bit crazy. And the narcissist will tell you that you are. And so you then start to think, oh, you know, and we get to a point where something called cognitive dissonance, which is basically a way of explaining utter confusion. So you think that you know what's going on, you think that you're perceiving reality the way that it is, but the narcissistic person will tell you you're crazy, you're seeing it wrong, you're getting it wrong, you're confused, you're mad, and you will start to think, gosh, maybe I am. And so then it becomes more, they've got more power over you, they've got more control over you, because you're weakening, you're starting to question your sanity. And that's what the gaslighting is all about, that creates
Yes.
this confusion. And that keeps people in, because when they try to leave, when a person tries to leave that relationship, the narcissist will then flip again, often go into victim. Oh, don't leave me, you know, again, saying things like, if only you would try harder, this would work. And so the person finds it very difficult to leave, because they really are thinking, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I need to go
That's
to
also
therapy. Maybe,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
and I
sad.
think the point that you brought up about labeling is a really important point, because we don't want to be going around saying, oh, this person's a narcissist, this person, you know, anytime we have a conflict, or anytime we have some kind of difficulty, because you know, it's always important to do that in a work, you know, and not just projecting outside that
Yes.
this is narcissistic behavior. So do you have any comments about that?
Well, this is a really tricky subject. And when I started to talk about it and be open about it, I was really aware how careful I had to be, because narcissist is being used to sort of like, we're throwing it around a lot in some areas, kind of like labeling people as being narcissistic when they're really, really not. And also, we all can be a little bit narcissistic at times. And we do live in a narcissistic world, really, a society that is very much, you know, based around that idea. I was talking about gaslighting. I made a short video about gaslighting, and I said the thing is, if someone just does this to you once, that isn't gaslighting. It's repetitive. It's over and over again. Someone who just rages at you once isn't necessarily a narcissist. We all have a shadow. Sometimes, you know, we get upset. Things happen. We can't label people as being narcissistic just if it's a one-off or a rare thing. But a narcissist, it will be continuous, it will happen over long periods of time, and it will slowly wear the victim or the survivor of it down. And that's the difference, really, is to be very careful. And also, we can't say that someone is a narcissist until they have seen a therapist, been diagnosed, but we have to be careful. And narcissistic personality disorder is a very serious disorder, but having a narcissistic traits is something that's much more common. But I do feel that this is something that has been hidden for so long. And it's not that suddenly everyone's a narcissist or suddenly we're labeling everyone. It's that this issue that has been very deep in our world and very dark in our world for many, many years is coming to the surface to show itself so that we can really look at this and try to heal it. It's nothing new. It's just that it's been really well hidden. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned sort of cognitive dissonance earlier, which is something, you know, that term is something that's also really sprung up recently in terms of, you know, what's happening in our world. And I know that we spoke about earlier, you know, that relationship between you know, narcissistic behavior in our relationships and what's happening on a kind of larger scale, that macro micro relationship. And you know, I'd like to start moving towards, you know, what we can do about this, because I mean it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, you know, we can't necessarily do anything on a global scale. You know, we can make positive conversations like this to kind of build awareness, but you know, on an individual basis we can support this transition into more loving, heart-based, unity consciousness kind of outlook in our relationships, in our family, and then in our community, and then that has that ripple effect.
That's it. And that's where I feel I'm so passionate, because it's about educating people and helping them to see this, but it's also about trying to change the way that we manage our relationships and each other. So really trying to feel that, you know, because when I started to speak out last year, I was finding so many people who are on a spiritual journey were suffering with narcissistic abuse. People who were awakening were having this issue. And I started to see the similarity between waking up to being in a narcissistic relationship and waking up to recognizing that we live in a world that is not what it seems, and that there's just so much corruption. And you know, so I thought this is really interesting, like this micro of like individuals in one-to-one relationships, and then this huge macro of what's happening in the world. And it just felt that the two were really mirroring each other, and that, you know, what's happening for us one-to-one and shut away in our homes and our families is also happening on the wider world. And really thinking about, well, what can we do about that? Because I know for me in my work, when I'm working on a retreat or in a yoga class, I say to people, you know, there's nothing we can do about so much that's going on out there. You know, we're helpless, but there's so much we can do to help the person down the road, you know, ourselves. And so it's like thinking, okay, so if we know someone is in a narcissistic relationship, could we reach out to them? Could we try and support them? It's about, you know, rather than being compliant and people pleasing and being nice all the time and not wanting to get involved, do we start to perhaps step in a similar way to how we wish that we could when it comes to governments and, you know, multinational industries? We wish that we could get to the CEO or the, you know, we can't, but we can get to the neighbor, we can get to the colleague, we can support each other in the micro. And I feel that that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build communities again that are heart-centered, heart-led, where we come out of this insane compliance to the top-down structures, to the rules, to the regulations, and that we need to do that again. We need to, if there's a woman perhaps, or a man, speaking out in his or her community and saying, you know, I've been abused, please help me. And, you know, rather than supporting the perpetrator, which is what we've been doing, I think, you know, our society tend to support the bullies, and the victims and those that are vulnerable and weak sort of, you know, they fall by the wayside. So it's about shifting that into going and really trying to help the person, listening to them, validating them, supporting them. And I'm not saying that we ostracize all toxic people, but I do think that, you know, tribal communities, the way that they would perhaps deal with someone who's aggressive or toxic would be to sort of like not support them, basically, to cut off the support. And, you know,
yeah, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because unfortunately that can be manipulated as well. You know, people can say that they've been abused in order to gain,
that's the problem,
you know, gain ground and things like that. So ultimately, you know, and I'd like to speak with you about what you do if you're in a narcissistic relationship, because I think if it is that very, very heavy narcissism, you know, not just a narcissism trait or one-off or whatever, then the best policy is to remove yourself, you know, because it is very unworkable.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's that boundary, isn't it, between, you know, on a community level, if someone's causing havoc for the whole community and, you know, breaking the community up and causing trouble, then, you know, what is the best policy, as opposed to, you know, if there is room to support both the victim and the perpetrator, because ultimately, you know, often people are perpetrators because they've been traumatized, because they've been a victim, you know. So then in that instance, if it is a healable situation, you know, we want to embrace both ultimately and find healing within all of that, because that's the ultimate healing, isn't it? If we can hold everyone in our communities. But I understand, you know, what you're saying, because I understand that sometimes the only solution, and I've experienced this myself, is removal, because it is so unworkable, you know. And let's look at relationships, not just romantic relationships, but in terms of work relationships, you know, all kinds of relationships, because it can cause havoc in the community. So is that something you can speak to, Saira?
Yeah, well, absolutely, that you have to get away. I do feel that we are heading into a new vibration, and things will change. But at the moment, if you are in a narcissistic relationship, you do need to get away. And that can be really difficult, but it's got to be done. There's no point. You are banging your head against the brick wall trying to change this person. And they could well, if they went to therapy and if they got their support, but you trying to do that is just more rescuing, more fixing, more codependency. So you have to try and get away. And in a work situation as well, I support a lot of people who have had horrendous things happen to them in their work. It's heartbreaking, but the best thing to do is to try to get away. And then to try and build our communities and support both sides. Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that there's a right or wrong here, but it's almost like, so it's about finding our voice. It's about getting yourself away, but also finding your voice, speaking up. So many relationships, this narcissism takes over. It takes the power, it takes the control, because the other person isn't willing to speak up. And that's the same in our communities and in our world. It's about us all finding our voices and saying no. We have to start saying no to this, rather than trying to fix it, rather than trying to make them better. What a narcissist would probably be it would really benefit them if we say, that's not okay. And that isn't, rather than sort of like allowing the behavior and accepting the behavior, it's saying no to the behavior. And I see that again on this micro and macro level. Like,
and that's what we really need to do on a collective level. You know, I do not consent within our communities, and start to, rather than focus on the problems, focus on building the heart-based solutions that we're all really looking for. And I know in terms of the solutions, one of the things that we wanted to talk about in this podcast is what we can do to regulate the nervous system, because,
Yeah.
you know, having been in that kind of relationship, it does deregulation because you are placed in that kind of fight or flight survival mode. So I know that you've done a lot of work on the vagus nerve, and I'd love to talk with you about what we can do to reset the vagus nervous system. I also just wanted to talk about, I've got this amazing podcast coming up next week about community building. And it just seems such a lovely, beautiful follow-on from this, you know, because we've just talked about how that is the ultimate healing for all of this. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is the ultimate healing for everything when we move into those heart-based safe spaces rather than these toxic, abusive kind of spaces. So
it is the answer. Yes. So I came because of my own journey with healing and looking at the trauma disorder that I had, recognizing my nervous system was dysregulated. I started to look into the vagus nerve and looking at, you know, what we could actually do. So this is like a practical thing that I can share with my clients, with my retreat guests, to support them in trying to regulate, because that is the key. When you've been in a narcissistic relationship, you're in survival mode. You're constantly waiting for the next drama, the next attack, the next rage. So it leaves you basically get stuck in activation. So you're constantly in activation of, you know, that all of those sort of mechanisms, you know, adrenaline pumping, cortisol pumping, and your nervous system can just be, you can become so dysregulated that everything can be a trigger. The slightest thing can be a trigger. And then that then creates so many ongoing issues in your life. So the vagus nerve is something that we can get to actually do some simple sort of exercises. I call them resets. And these were mostly created by a man called Stephen Porges, who discovered polyvagal theory in 1994. And if you are suffering with, you know, trauma, if you're extremely anxious, I really, you know, advise you to check this out because it can really help you. So basically, the vagus nerve runs from the brain stem down into the gut. And vagus means wandering in Latin. So it's wandering through the body. It wanders through the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, back of throat, neck, and then down through all of the major organs into your gut, which of course we call the emotional brain, don't we? So we know that the gut, if we're stressed, if we're anxious, that's all going. So we can't get to any of these major organs. We can't get to our heart to stop it racing if we're having a panic attack. We can't get to our gut to stop it from, you know, causing all sorts of digestive issues. But we can get to these areas around the head. So the vagus nerve can be reset by using breath work, pranayama, by doing massage into the ears and doing some eye reset work as well. So what we're doing when we do this, also chanting and singing helps to reset through the back of the throat. So what we're doing is we're trying to get the vagus nerve to send a signal back to the brain that we're safe. The vagus nerve sends a signal from the brain to the body, asking the body, how are we doing? Is everything okay? Are we safe? And if we're feeling trauma, it will send a signal back saying, no, not okay. And this is nothing, we can't consciously affect this. The vagus nerve doesn't understand positive thinking. It doesn't understand, you know, you could say to yourself, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. You could keep doing your mantras. The vagus nerve doesn't understand that. It's happening very, very, very deep in our consciousness. And so we can get these parts of the body to send a signal to, say, for example, the ear massage. We're massaging the ears. It feels really nice. We're calming everything down. And then the ears send a signal through the vagus back to the brain. We're good. And
beautiful.
So we can do that with the back of, and so that's kind of a way to explain what we're doing. We're trying to turn off this signal that is very difficult to turn off with just the mind, and say, we're good, we're good. And so doing these exercises regularly can actually help to bring regulation to your nervous system, which will then in time mean that perhaps that trigger that you would always find would set you off when that person was a bit funny with you, or, you know, or something happened, the car breaks down, your nervous system then copes better. So, and then you can bring the exercises in once you've learned them. They're so simple. You can then, next time you feel that trauma coming up, that adrenaline rush pumping, you can quickly go to your exercises and really quickly calm yourself down and regulate again. So this helped me, and I don't share anything if it hasn't helped me. I'm like a, you know, a living experiment.
Well,
Of
thank you
like, you
so
know,
much
this
for bringing
really
these
works.
wonderful tools to us, you know, that are going to really support everybody with their healing and self-regulation, which is, you know, empowering, which is so important as well, because often, you know, if we've been in that kind of relationship, we do feel disempowered. So it's being able to control, you know, what's happening for us in a really positive way.
You can feel like you're just flying around when you feel that way. I mean, I remember being in, you know, really deep trauma a couple of years ago, and you can't think straight, you can't function, you can't run your life. It's awful. And if you know, if this can help people to come out of that and to feel a bit better, then that's, you know, it makes me feel like all of that I went through is worthwhile as well, because it means I can now support other people.
Thank you so
By
much. Would you
understanding.
like
And
to take us through the
yes.
process then, Sarah?
So we're going to do some simple work just to try to reset the vagus nerve. And this is going to really help if you're suffering with any kind of trauma disorder or high stress, high anxiety. So just come and gently close your eyes and bring your left hand onto your upper chest. And just start to go to your breath here. Start to go to some nice, long, slow, deep breaths in and out. And just feel that you're arriving and centering. So this is powerful work to reset the vagus nerve. And this work can really help you to regulate your nervous system. But before we start anything, I just want you to take a moment just to honor the journey that you've been on and how you've come to be here today, everything that you've perhaps suffered and the trauma that's been in your body, that's been set in your body from any experiences that you've had, either currently or in the past. And I just want you to let go of any self-blame and shame that you feel about what's happened to you and about the dysregulation that you feel within yourself. Just let go of any self-blame or shame before we begin. And just feel some self-compassion and some self-forgiveness, which is the beginning of a healing process, self-love. So just keeping your eyes closed and focusing to your breath. I'm going to guide you through a really simple breath work to begin. Okay, so if you just gently open your eyes, just blink your eyes open to look at me, and I'll guide you through this breath work and then we'll do it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine a few different pranayamas, yoga breath works, to help to reset this vagus nerve. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to inhale for 4 through the nose. Let's just do it together to begin. I then want you to close your nose, hold your nostrils with both fingers, index finger, thumb, and tuck your chin right in. Tuck your chin right into your chest. And as you do that, I want you to feel that there's a gentle sort of connection into the back of your throat, your glottis. You can feel it. The more you tuck in, the more you're going to feel it. There, we're going to hold the breath in for 4. We'll then inhale, lift up the head, release the fingers from the nose, and then exhale for 6. Okay, so we're going to do that 5 times. Inhale 4, hold for 4, lift the head, release, and exhale for 6. Okay, so let's do that together. You can close your eyes, or if you need to leave them open, feel free. So let's inhale together for 2, 3, 4. Hold the nose, tuck the chin in, create the lock. So hold the nose, tuck the chin in and hold for 2, 3, 4. Then lift the head, release and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold the nose, tuck the chin in, hold the breath, 2, 3, 4. Lift the head, release and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold the nose, tuck in, create that lock at the back of the throat, 2, 3, 4. Lift the head, release, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just do one more now. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold the nose, tuck the chin in, hold, 2, 3, 4. Lift the head, release the nose and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then just pause, just breathe. Now, if you were doing this another time, you could do that 10 times. That would be really good. If you could do that another time when you've got a minute, just do that 10 times. Count on your fingers each time you do it. Okay, so the next part of the breath work, if you just again, just blink your eyes open. Sorry, that's not the breath work. We're going to do the ears now. So just blink your eyes open. So you can do this one at a time, but just because we're trying to do it a little bit quickly, we're going to do 2 together. So I want you to take your index fingers, pop them into your ears. And so if you look at my ear this way, my finger's gone in and I'm pushing back. So we're pushing back that way. And you're just going to make some little gentle circles. Now, we're just going to do this for a few breaths, but you could do this up to 30 seconds or even longer. So just massaging around both ways. Now, what we're doing here is the vagus nerves runs down through the eyes, through the ears, down the back of the throat. We've worked with the throat with that breath work. We're now trying to get into the ears. What we're trying to do is get the vagus nerve to change its signal that's going back to the brain to say that it's not okay, it's not safe, that you're feeling trauma, you're feeling anxious. And instead, it's feeling good, it's feeling nice. Something lovely is happening in the ears, and it's going to send a signal back to the brain that all is well. We're then going to take the fingers on both sides, and I'll just show you this side nice and close. So you're going to go up into the top of the ear here and into that little ridge at the top. So do that on both sides, little circles. Sometimes you can feel a little bit of a click. That's really normal. Now, a really good sign that you are resetting your vagus nerve is obviously you start to feel better, but also if you yawn or if you feel the need to take a big sigh, that is a sign that your vagus nerve is resetting. So we've done that at the top. We're then going to go behind the ears. So again, I'm going to show you. So I'm going to get my finger right in behind the ear, just to where the ear meets the back of the head, both sides, and you're going to push up. Just push up. Don't move around. Just push up. Stay with your breath. If you want to close your eyes, that can feel nice. And then we're going to pull down. So just feel like you're pulling down. You're not moving. You're just pulling down. Hold it there. You can do this for much, much longer another time. Or you could watch this and pause it and hold it for longer. And then we're going to pull back. So we're going to pull the ears back. We're just going to get right into that ridge right there and just feel that you're pulling the skin back away from the lobe there, and just hold. And then to finish this, we're just going to bring index finger thumb down to the earlobe and just start to massage and start to go up. Now, this is something you want to be doing regularly, trying to do it every day. This is on my YouTube channel, Malula Yoga. I have this. It's a full reset. It takes about 20 minutes. There's a 10-minute introduction in that, and then a 20-minute reset. And if you do that regularly, a few times a week, every day would be amazing. Or anytime that you really feel that trauma coming on, it can help to reset. And over time, it can help your nervous system to regulate drastically. And this is a part of a whole sort of like healing toolbox that you might have that includes perhaps some therapy, perhaps some EMDR. So hopefully that feels really nice for your ears. And then we're just going to bring the hands down, and you might like to roll out your shoulders. Remember that movement is really important. Yoga is really helpful, but this really simple reset with the breath and the ears is something that you can do anywhere, anytime. You can take yourself off to the toilet and do it. You can do it in your car when you're in a traffic jam. Really, really helpful, and hopefully really empowering for you to have that to work with whenever you need.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Beautiful
Oh,
process. I'm feeling quite relaxed after that.
yeah. Yeah, me too. It does work wonders. I do it, middle of the night, like I said, traffic jam, before something that I'm a bit nervous about, a podcast, for example. Yeah, so yeah, I hope that really resonates and supports your people who've watched this, Sarah. I really hope that just getting this information out there, and that there's so much we can do. We don't just have to sit and think, oh, that's it then, I've got trauma disorder, or oh, that's it, I've been abused. There's so much we can do to help ourselves and each other, because it's all about that, isn't it? It's all about trying to help each other.
Absolutely. And do you at home, do let us know in the comments how you found that process, and also if you have any questions. Both Sarah and I will be following this on YouTube, and we'll try our best to answer your questions. And
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, did you have any last thoughts, Sarah, before we finish up today?
Oh, I could talk about this for hours, Sarah. I'm absolutely passionate about it, but I really hope that in this short time I've got across, and that maybe someone out there watching this might recognize that perhaps they've been in a narcissistic relationship, or that their friend is. But I think, if I was to say anything, let's just support each other. Let's just stand up together in our communities and for the world. This is something we can do. We can actually help. On a small scale, but it's that drop in the ocean, isn't it? It's like the more of us that make the little changes, the more effect we'll have.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
to
it's
heal,
already
to
happening,
bring the
because
healing.
like you say, it's been hidden and it's all
Yeah.
becoming visible now. So that in itself, that observation is enabling a huge shift. So thank you so much for your contribution to that. And I will
thank you,
put in the
Sarah.
comments all the details on how to connect with Sarah if you want to find out more about the wonderful work that she's doing. So many blessings, and thank you everybody for listening in today. Do enjoy more New Earth podcasts.